Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a 12-team PPR mock draft from the 4th overall spot using FantasyPro's Draft Wizard. The roster positions for today's mock are 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, flex, kicker, defense, and 6 bench spots. We're going to be drafting up against the expert consensus rankings on FantasyPros, as well as the composite ADP from ESPN, NFL Sleeper, and RT Sports. I did make an adjustment to the positional value of wide receivers to boost them up to a high because I feel like this year, unlike in prior seasons, wide receivers are going to be coming off the board at a much quicker rate early on in fantasy drafts. But before we can get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure they do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into this 12-team PPR mock draft from the number 4 overall spot. So the draft begins here with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Cooper Kupp. So since this is a 3 wide receiver league plus a flex, typically at the 4 spot, I am hoping that I can select a wide receiver. So Jefferson, Chase, and Cooper Kupp off of the board. So this makes our decision a little bit tougher. Now, I do have Tyreek Hill ranked ahead of Cooper Kupp, but the fact that Christian McCaffrey is still here is making me question whether I would rather have Tyreek or Christian McCaffrey. I do think ultimately, even though this is a 3 wide receiver league with 1 flex, I think I'm going to go with Christian McCaffrey in this spot. I think after I draft Christian McCaffrey, I could just go full hammer time like I'm fucking MC Hammer and draft a million wide receivers in a row and get Christian McCaffrey as my hero running back. So I'm going to go with Christian McCaffrey here. It is close between him and Tyreek Hill. So let me know in the comment section if this was your pick. Would you go with McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill? I think Tyreek could easily be the wide receiver 1 this year. But if I'm being honest with you, I think Christian McCaffrey is an incredibly safe pick. This is a guy that could run for 1,000 and get 1,000 receiving yards as well. This is a 49ers offense that I expect to be incredible. They have an incredibly solid offensive line. Their head coach, Kyle Shanahan, is a run game guru. So to me, it was kind of a no-brainer to go with McCaffrey, but there was still a part of me that wanted to go with Tyreek Hill at that spot. After Tyreek, we see Amon-Ra St. Brown, Travis Kelce, Austin Eckler, CeeDee Lamb, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, and 9-inch Nicholas Chubb. The second round opens with Stephon Diggs, Derrick Henry, AJ Brown, DK Metcalf, Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, and Tony Pollard. Please, no one take DK Metcalf ahead of Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, or Jalen Waddle. There are a bunch of wide receivers that I would take DK Metcalf over, but especially if you're sitting in the early 2nd round, I know DK Metcalf looks like he was built in a lab, but do not take him ahead of guys like Waddle, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams. That is just not a good pick. So looking at the board, the top suggestion from FantasyPros is Jonathan Taylor. For me, Jonathan Taylor is a clear stay away right now. If he shows up to camp and he's playing, then boom, you can draft Jonathan Taylor with full confidence. But right now, with this contract situation, all of this bullshit going around Jonathan Taylor, to me, the most sound advice right now is just to stay away from it. If he falls to you in like the late 3rd round, then at that point, you have to just take the risk. Because the upside is legitimately Jonathan Taylor comes back to the Colts. This is a team that likes to run the ball a lot with now Anthony Richardson. Jonathan Taylor is a great running back. He does have top 3 upside, but in the 2nd round, the risk is just far too high for me, in my opinion. So looking at the board here, knowing that so many wide receivers came off of the board here, I think I am going to have to go wide receiver here. Best wide receivers available: Chris Olave, Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley. So my highest ranked wide receiver available is Calvin Ridley. If you want to watch the wide receiver rankings video, I posted it earlier on today. I have Calvin Ridley as my wide receiver 12, but by the time we get to pick again, I think there's a good shot that Calvin Ridley is still available, and I don't want to just reach on him because of that. I'm going to pray to the fantasy gods, play the ADP game that Calvin Ridley, every single draft, goes in at least the 3rd round and sometimes later. I don't think he is going to get reached on in the late 2nd or in the early 3rd round before we get to pick again. So I'm going to wait, and we're not going to draft Ridley here. We're going to go with my highest ranked other wide receiver, which is Devontae Smith. I think Devontae Smith is a guy that moved up my rankings because of the upside he has weekly. This is a Philadelphia Eagles offense that I expect to be taking deuces on the chest of defenses week in and week out. I think Jalen Hurts is an incredible passer, and I think that 25, 30-plus game-breaking upside that Devontae Smith possesses is why I have him ranked ahead of a guy like T. Higgins, who I think is a lot safer. Chris Olave, who I think there are some question marks, not necessarily with him, but with the fact that Michael Thomas is on the team, so I'd rather just go with Devontae Smith in that spot and hope that Ridley falls to us after Smith, Jonathan Taylor, Chris Olave, as well as Josh Jacobs. The third round opens with Keenan Allen, T. Higgins, and Ramondre Stevenson, so we played the game correctly. We are going to be able to get Calvin Ridley in this spot. I really do have strong beliefs in Calvin Ridley. I think that Calvin Ridley has the upside to be a top 5 wide receiver this season, with Trevor Lawrence really stepping up under Doug Peterson last season. With the fact that Trevor Lawrence made Christian Kirk look so good, I think Calvin Ridley is the clear alpha wide receiver, the clear number 1 target in this offense. This is an offense that you're going to want pieces of, because I think this is going to be one of the better offenses in the National Football League this year. I don't think Calvin Ridley has lost a step. I don't think Calvin Ridley is washed. All the clips I have seen, Calvin Ridley is looking silky smooth out there. Some people might consider a guy like Mahomes, Hurts, or Allen at this spot, or even Mark Andrews, because he fell to us at the 304. But since this is a 3 wide receiver league as well as a flex, I am going to lean with the wide receiver at this spot and select Calvin Ridley. I like Amari Cooper a ton as well, but I have been really heavily targeting Calvin Ridley recently, and I think top 12, wide receiver 12, is kind of his peak for my rankings, right? I don't know if I'm going to be able to galaxy brain and rank him even higher, but top 12, where he's coming off the board, I think that is entirely possible, and I am excited, really excited this year for this Jaguars offense. After Calvin Ridley, we see Patrick Mahomes, followed by DeAndre Hopkins, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Najee Harris, Mark Andrews, Joe Mixon, and Travis Etienne. The 4th round opens with Jahmyr Gibbs, Lamar Jackson, Breece Hall, Amari Cooper, Deebo Samuel, Chris Godwin, Joe Shiesty, and Aaron Jones. I really like that people are starting to take Lamar Jackson over Joe Burrow now in a majority of drafts. Now, even without the injury risk with Joe Burrow, I just think Lamar Jackson's the better fantasy football pick. The upside he has, because he could rush for over 1,000 yards, is just downright incredible. He has quarterback 1 upside. I think Joe Burrow could finish as a top 3 quarterback, but without that elite rushing upside, he would have to have an insane season to finish as quarterback 1. And if Lamar rushes for 900 yards, maybe sneaks in 7 touchdowns potentially, throws a bunch because he's in the Todd Monken offense now, I really do think his ceiling is the quarterback 1. And again, I love the wide receiver core they have there. Rashad Master, Bateman, Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham Jr., and obviously they have Mark Andrews. If you guys have enjoyed thus far, make sure you guys do hit that subscribe button down below if you're new. And whether you are new or not, make sure you hit that like button. So with the quarterback still available, I do like Justin Fields the most, but the 4th round just feels like too pretty of a penny, too high of a price to pay for Justin Fields. I think Hawkinson is actually a pretty solid pick in the 4th round, but Hawkinson feels like another one of those tight ends where it's just kind of a safety net pick. I really don't think that with Jordan Addison there, TJ Hawkinson could become the number 2 or the number 1 tight end in fantasy football. I still do think the Minnesota Vikings are going to be a team that throw the ball a shit ton, so Hawkinson is close to a lock to being a top 3 tight end, but I just don't know if he necessarily has that upside to be the number 1 tight end to overtake Travis Kelce, whereas I could see a path for Waller scoring like 12 touchdowns, being the number 1 receiver on the Giants. That is just legitimately impossible for Hawkinson with Jordan Addison there, as well as with the best wide receiver, or one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, in Justin Jefferson. So not really wanting to go Hawkinson here. A little too pretty of a penny to be drafting Justin Fields here. So we're either going running back or wide receiver. I'm glad we got some positive news on Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker's groin injury is believed not to be serious. They saw him back at camp yesterday. He is able to run in a straight line. Obviously, he's not out there cutting yet because it was a groin injury. They're probably going to take things slow, right? They don't want to have him hurt his groin even further and potentially miss weeks of the season. I still do think Zach Charbonnet plays a much stronger role in this offense than people believe, but in the 4th, the 5th round, if Kenneth Walker's there, I do definitely understand the upside and why people like him. For me, Miles Sanders is a guy I've been fading. I think people are very polar opposite on Miles Sanders. I've seen people really talk this guy up, get on their knees, give him the Gawk Gawk 9000, talk all about the Frank Reich pass catching talks. Well, do you remember when Frank Reich talked up Nyheim Hines last year as a fantasy football draft pick that you got to draft? If I was doing my fantasy draft, I've got to get Nyheim Hines. Well, they fucking traded Nyheim Hines. Traded him. Now, I'm not saying that one thing equals the other and Miles Sanders is going to be some type of a bust, but I'm just not excited about Sanders. If he falls to me in a correct range, sure, I'm fine to draft him, but I'm not sitting here right now fiending for him in the 4th round. So we're going to end up going wide receiver here. Best receivers available: Drizzy Drake London, Jerry Jeudy, DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, Christian Watson. So we do get to pick again at the 5.04, so I'm going to play the ADP game again. I have Christian Watson. I think he is the best wide receiver available here, but I think there's a good chance he falls back to us. Drake London's a guy that I like talent-wise. I'm just worried about Desmond Ridder. Again, that doesn't mean that Drake London's guaranteed to be a big fat bust, but it does throw some caution tape onto me wanting to draft him in the 4th round. If he falls into the 5th, then fine. I'm fine taking that risk, especially as my wide receiver 4 on this team. But as the wide receiver 2 on some teams where you might be drafting him, it does feel a little bit risky. I have Jerry Jeudy ranked the highest out of this group, though. There is definitely risk with him as well. There's been a lot of talk about Courtland Sutton in training camp recently, that he's in the best shape of his life, but it really is best shape of your life season. There's training camp blurbs every single year. This player looks like fucking a Greek god and Adonis, and it never ends up working out, but I do still like Courtland Sutton a ton. I think with this team, we are going to go with a little bit more of a risky pick here and go with my guy, Wiki, DJ Moore. Now, DJ Moore has been basically handcuffed by the fact that every single year he's been in the NFL, his quarterback has been bottom of the barrel, complete and utter dog shit, right? He had Cam Newton when he was no longer Super Cam, when he was on top of the NFL, MVP caliber quarterback, Cam Newton. He has had PJ Walker, XFL legend, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, just to name a couple of garbage quarterbacks that were throwing the ball to DJ Moore, and yet he was still able to produce for fantasy, but he was never able to reach that peak. Now, I'm not here to tell you that Justin Fields is the second coming of Patrick Mahomes or something like that, but I think Justin Fields is by far and away the best quarterback that DJ Moore has ever played with, and I think a lot of people like to throw stones at Justin Fields just like they do with Lamar Jackson, talking about how he's a running back, this, that, and the other thing. But in reality, Justin Fields is a much better passer than people give him credit for. In college at The Ohio State, people were all over his passing upside, how good he looked, dicing up these defenses. So I think DJ Moore's in for a good year, his best year yet at the NFL level. After Wiki DJ Moore, we see Christian Kirk, Miles Sanders, TJ Hawkinson, solid pick at the end of the 4th round. Again, not a guy that I am super in love with, but I get why people are taking him. Mike Evans, Drizzy Drake London, and Terry McLaurin. So we're back up on the board here, and this is going to be tough because I like Jeudy a ton. I love Watson. I love Deontay Johnson, and at some point, it's too far for Kenneth Walker to fall. So the question is, what are we going to think about the running backs when we come back up to pick again? All of those picks later, and what are we going to think about the wide receivers? So realistically, by the time we get to pick in the 6th round, a lot of these guys are going to be gone. Walker, Akers, Dobbins, Connor, Pierce. We might be left with Rashad White, Madison. We might be left with even worse, like Kamara, Javonte Williams, Swift. So for me, I think I'm going to end up going running back here because I do like a lot of these wide receivers that may fall our way. Again, I am probably going to pivot back and forth on Kenneth Walker all offseason, but what I do know is that I want a piece of this Seattle backfield. I think this Seattle offense is going to be really good, and if I don't take Walker, I want Charbonnet. If I don't take Charbonnet, I want Walker. I really do think whichever running back ends up being the guy getting a majority of touches is going to be fantastic. Kenneth Walker runs through defenses like a bat out of hell. This guy is running like a crack fiend, going to go ahead and steal some crack like Jack Black in fucking Tropic Thunder. I am a huge fan of the talent of Kenneth Walker, but again, it's important to note that if you're drafting him higher than the 5th round, there is so much risk with that selection. There's the risk that Charbonnet maybe takes over. There's the risk that the groin continues to get worse, or maybe it doesn't heal and it impacts him early on in the season. I'm going to take Walker here, but if you want to take Judy or Christian Watson, anything like that, I'm not going to argue with you, if I'm being honest with you. I'm not the biggest fan of Kenneth Walker. I just like the value for him in the 5th round. After Kenneth Walker, we see Jerry Jeudy, Alexander Madison, J.K. Dobbins, Damian Pierce, Javonte Williams, Christian Watson, Deontay Johnson, Mike Williams. The 6 opens with Justin Herbert, the pervert, Tyler Lockett, Alvin Kamara, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Michael Pittman Jr., Cam Akers, and Hollywood Brown. So we're back up on the board here. I don't get why people are taking Herbert ahead of Justin Fields. I get that Herbert is this uber safe option, this wrap the condom around your team, and Justin Fields is certainly more risky. Anytime you have a quarterback that's rushing a lot like Justin Fields, the injury risk goes up. 100% the injury risk goes up, but the upside also goes up. Justin Fields could be the #1 quarterback because of that rushing upside, like we talk about with Lamar. Very unlikely that Herbert is able to do that. Now, Herbert could be a top 3 quarterback, but Fields could be #1. Now, we do have DJ Moore on the team, so this will be a stack. I will talk about this stacking thing ad nauseum in best ball on Underdog. It is something that you basically have to do to win. You have to stack to win, to get that upside, squeeze as much upside out of your team as possible weekly. In redraft, it is not needed. It is an added upside. I go into my drafts not necessarily looking to stack, but if it falls to me at the right value, I will do it. If I had to reach for Justin Fields in the 4th round or something like that, or I take a receiver like Devontae Smith and then I take A.J. Brown. That's the best example, right? You take A.J. Brown in the back of the 1st round. For instance, he didn't go in the back of the 1st round, but most of the time he's a back of the 1st round pick. And then the 2nd round, you reach for Jalen Hurts because you want that stack. I don't think you need to do that in redraft. But if the stack comes to you, I'm fine taking it. The reason why you should like stacking is because of the upside it presents weekly. If DJ Moore has a big game, more than likely, Justin Fields dropped his nuts, teabagged the defense. Now, Fields could have a great game without DJ Moore having a great game, but I hope you understand the point. It's for the upside. I get that if the Bears shit the bed, then more than likely Fields and DJ Moore end up being bad plays that week, but the upside to me outweighs the risk mightily. If Justin Fields was to fall to the 6th round in any of my drafts, I would be laughing straight to the bank, and I think there are some people that are still discrediting Justin Fields, still might take Lawrence, Herbert ahead of him, and I think that is lunacy. After Fields, we see Trevor Lawrence, Darren Waller, James Conner, Tua Tagovailoa, Rashad White, and Jordan Addison. You guys know, if you've been watching my videos for a while, I am basically the #1 Tua fan on earth, but in the 7th round, I am not doing that. There's too much injury risk for him to be a 7th round pick. In the 9th round, it's an insta-click. In the 7th round, though, that is too high for me. So since we already have McCaffrey and Walker, I'm thinking about just hammering wide receivers here. I feel very confident in Smith and Ridley being week-to-week options. Same thing with DJ Moore, but there's definitely risk with DJ Moore. So I think if we just hammer maybe 2 wide receivers back-to-back here with our next 2 picks, Jordan 96, 97, we're going to have a solid flex option weekly. I don't think we necessarily need to reach on Goddard or Pitts here. If I was to take one, it would be Pitts. Goddard's another one of those tight ends where I've talked about this a bunch. It's just safe, right? It's that safety net you have on your team. He's never going to really screw you over. He's never really going to be the reason why you lose your week, but he's also probably never going to drop 25 points, drop his nuts on the defense. So I would rather just go ahead and go with a different tight end in Pitts at that spot. Looking at the board here, Dotson, Pickens, Burks, Najigba, Cooks, Cortland Sutton, best receivers, best running backs are Swift, Montgomery, Cook, Pacheco. We are going to go wide receiver here with the highest upside. I think that would either be JSN or Jahan Dotson. With JSN, though, there's a much higher chance that he's locked as the wide receiver 3 in terms of targets in this offense for a majority of the season, whereas Jahan Dotson is the guaranteed number 2 receiver in this Washington Commanders offense. They just brought in new offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, which I think is going to help this offense out a ton. Jahan Dotson, down the stretch of last season, really caught fire like he was Katniss Everdeen in the fucking Hunger Games, and I like the upside of Jahan Dotson. First round NFL draft caliber pick from 2022. In his rookie year, again, things weren't the best. He was banged up, but when he played towards the end of the season, he did look incredible. And I know a lot of people don't like Sam Howell, and I'm not saying Sam Howell's amazing either, but I think he might be just a fine quarterback, and that's good enough for Dotson. So after Dotson, George Pickens, Dalvin Cook, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Brandon Cooks, Dallas Goedert, Dak Prescott, Kyle Pitts, Evan Ingram, Cortland Sutton, Michael Thomas, Treylon Burks, Deshaun Watson, Juju Smith-Schuster, DeAndre Swift, Kadarius Toney, and Gabe Davis. So DeAndre Swift is a guy that I was never really fully in on. I watched Ron Stewart's video about DeAndre Swift, and it does somewhat scare me, if I'm being honest with you. Like, thinking about how Jalen Hurts just doesn't dump the ball off, how much usage is Swift going to get? Like, are you better off just waiting and then taking Penny later? I was never all in on DeAndre Swift. I don't have very much of him in my drafts right now, but he was a guy that I was definitely intrigued with. I wasn't full-on fading, and I don't think I'm still full-on fading him, but my intrigue after kind of putting that all into the brain, the hamster start running in my brain, thinking about how the Eagles don't, and Hurts don't really dump off the ball too much. Starting to worry a little bit about Swift. Now, Swift could still be great because of how electric of a playmaker he is, but how much volume is he really going to get? Once you get to this portion of the draft, the tight ends really all start to kind of mesh together. Like, really, what's the difference between Freiermuth, Njoku, Schultz, Dulcich, Higbee? Sure, I might like one tight end more than the other, but is it really worth taking one in the 8th when you can get the other one in, like, the 12th? So we aren't going to go tight end here. Realistically, based upon how this draft is composed here, we probably would want to go receiver, but I don't love any of these receivers. Like, I like Elijah Moore. I like Flowers, but with Bateman now being healthier, I'm a little bit more scared about Flowers. So I'd rather just go with the safe running back option here in case Kenneth Walker isn't that guy that, you know, I don't really think he's that guy, right? I think there's weeks where maybe even week 1 you might want to start Montgomery over him. We're going to go Montgomery. Super safe option. I love this Lions offense this season. I think Montgomery has the upside to score 10-plus rushing touchdowns. He's also a solid pass catcher. And if something was to happen to Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery would be a league winner, a legitimate top 10, top 8 running back option weekly. Knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, but obviously the upside is there. After Montgomery, Jacoby Myers, Danny Dimes, Zay Flowers, James Cook, Isaiah Pacheco, and Elijah Moore. Again, we still don't have a tight end, but I'm not really feeling the need to draft Freiermuth here when I think like 2 rounds later we could just get Schultz or Higbee, and I won't really feel that much different about my team if I do that. I do like Gibson a lot here, but again, this kind of a format is really just screaming out to me. You want to have 4 receivers to start, 3 receivers in your spots, obviously, and then 1 in the flex. So we are going to go with another wide receiver here. We're going to go with Rashad Bateman. I like Quentin Johnston a bunch as well, but Bateman getting activated off of the PUP list, seemingly good to go. I think 2 of these wide receivers are probably going to be very valuable in Baltimore, and one of them is going to end up flaming out, whether that is Zay Flowers in his rookie year, Rashad Bateman, even though he's the guy that's been there for a while, maybe he's the guy who flames out, or maybe it's just Odell. But I think none of these guys are really super safe weekly, but when you draft them, you'll understand the clear upside of this Baltimore Ravens offense being a little bit more pass-heavy, them being able to march down the field easily with Lamar, and just the upside that possesses, as well as the big play upside for Bateman, obviously, as he's a fast wide receiver. After Nico Collins, Quentin Johnston, and Zach Charbonnet, the Niners, Antonio Gibson, Odell Beckham Jr., the Bills, the Eagles, Adam Thielen, Sky Moore, A.J. Dillon, Brian Robinson, Jamal with 2 A's, Williams, Khalil Herbert, Darnell, here comes the Mooney, and Dalton Schultz. So we're back up on the clock here again. Still not really itching to draft a tight end, but I do know that even though me and 2 other teams don't have a tight end, in a real draft, with real people, people will draft a second tight end before I draft my real tight end. And I don't want to get buried into the Jawan Johnson range or something like that. This is a mistake that I have made in the past because I believe that my friends aren't going to do that. They're not going to draft a second quarterback before I get mine. For instance, if I don't have Fields, I'd be like, oh, I want Geno Smith. No one's going to draft Geno Smith before I do, right? Everyone already has a quarterback. And then the asshat that drafted Josh Allen in the second round drafts Geno Smith, and I'm sitting there feeling like a complete and utter fucking idiot because I didn't think it was possible because it doesn't make sense. But you got to understand that when you're doing your fantasy football drafts, even with some of the smarter people, they make crazy decisions. And a lot of times, the decision isn't even premeditated. They just realize they're on the clock, they haven't done a lot of mock drafts, they're shitting themselves, they needed some Pampers, and they accidentally are like, oh, they have like a fucking aneurysm, and they draft Geno Smith instead of the guy they actually need. So make sure that you prepare yourself for that. So again, while I don't necessarily love Freiermuth that much, I do think he's a solid tight end option. I know they drafted Darnell Washington out of Georgia, but that's more to be a blocker, more to be a sixth offensive lineman. Freiermuth is still a really solid player. I think Kenny Pickett is going to get better in 2023 compared to 2022. I've talked about this a bunch. It's hard for small hands Pickett to get worse than he was last season, so should be an uptick in production. After Freiermuth, Rondale Moore, Rashad Penny, Tyler Algier, Jerick McKinnon, Samaje Perine, as well as Zay Jones. Looking at the running backs still available, Harris, A-Chain, Mitchell, Singletary, Jeff Wilson. Receivers, Allen Lazard, Jameson Williams, Tyler Boyd, Romeo Doubs. At quarterback, when you pay up for Fields, you pay up for one of these quarterbacks. I'm not drafting a second one. If I did draft Freiermuth, and maybe you're not as comfortable with a guy like Freiermuth, you want to draft two, I wouldn't be against that. I don't normally do that, I'm going to be honest, but I'm not necessarily against that idea either. So we are going to end up going either running back or receiver here. I want to make something very clear. If Dalvin Cook could just fucking sign with a team, it would make everything so much easier. I love Devin A-Chain. I love all the reports that the Dolphins, even Jalen Waddle yesterday was talking so positively about Devin A-Chain. He's a little guy. He's not huge. He's like Kyler Murray. He needs a fucking step stool to go brush his teeth. And that motion looked like I was doing something else. But you get what I mean, right? Pause. But he's a littler guy. He's one of those guys, super high upside, super high risk, right? In any given game, he could get one dump off, make one cut, and with that incredible speed, take it to the crib. There's going to be some games where he scores 3 points. There's other games where he scores 15 points. If I knew that Dalvin Cook wasn't going to show up, Devin A-Chain would be on all my videos as a guy that I take in all these mock drafts. But the problem is, if Dalvin Cook shows up, he's going to ruin everything. So we're going to go with A-Chain here, hoping Dalvin Cook doesn't show up. Dalvin Cook does show up. I wouldn't cut Devin A-Chain if this was a real league, but I wouldn't have been like, oh, damn, I'm so excited to have gotten A-Chain in the second round, or in the 11th round, because Dalvin Cook's ADP would move up a bunch. Cook probably went in the 5th or the 6th round. Where did Dalvin Cook go in this one? It's pretty different every draft. 7th round. Yeah, I think that would be great if he was in Miami. If he goes to the Jets, 7th round might be a little bit more fair. It's fairly up in the air where he's going. Maybe he goes to Buffalo. I mean, I wish he would just sign. Again, like, waiting every single day, thinking you're going to get the Dalvin Cook sign notification, and then it's just some bullshit like, oh, he visited this team, or, oh, look at him training. I don't give a shit that he's training. I know that he's training. I just want to see what team he signs to. Because it's going to severely adjust my rankings. After A-Chain, we see Devin Singletary, Allen Lazard, Damian Harris, Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson, Jameson Williams, DJ Chark, baby Chark, Romeo Doubs, Donta Foreman, Raheem Mostert, Dallas Cowboys, David Njoku, Tyler Boyd, Michael Gallup, Hunter Renfrow, and Jalen Warren. Back up on the board here, gonna go wide receiver. DPJ, Osborne, Pierce, Hodgins, best available. I take Hodgins in like every draft. I'm gonna do it again here. I really think Hodgins has the inside track to be the number one receiver on the Giants. I know there's upside in Wandale. There's upside in literally all of the guys there. Jalen Hyatt, the rookie. But I'm going to just stick with what worked last season. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Isaiah Hodgins was the number one guy there down the stretch. When they actually gave him work, he looked incredible. So I'm going to take that shot on him, even though Fantasy Pros told me it was a reach. After Hodgins, Higbee, Kirk O'Chains, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Geno Smith, Greg Dulcich, and Tank Bigsby, my guy, one of my favorite late-round running backs. So we're going to close this draft out with a running back and a wide receiver. Looking at the back still available, you could go Chig, I guess, or Komet or Everett here if you wanted our tight end, but we're not going to do that. Kendre Miller, Kenneth Gainwell, Rashawn Johnson, Chuba Hubbard, Jerome Ford, Gus Edwards, Zamir White. I think Zamir White is pretty clearly the pick here, but he'd probably be available in the next round. I think Jacobs is going to play. I'm going to be honest with you. I would be shocked if Jacobs wasn't there week 1. But when you're in these kind of drafts, if you draft Jacobs in a redraft league, you 100% should just draft Zamir White. But if you're sitting here and you're like, you know what, with the last pick, this is a guy that you could literally start in your lineup weekly if Jacobs doesn't return. I still think he's going to, but that upside alone, even if I don't think that Jacobs isn't going to hold out, like I would be really, again, perplexed if he held out, but I'm gonna star Zamir White because we're gonna get him in the next round because he's gonna fall our way. We're gonna go with a wide receiver. Rashid Shaheed banged up now. I wonder what happened to him. He wasn't a guy that was really on my radar. Another guy with a groin injury. Not the best. He was solid last year though, but not great to know that he has a groin injury. Mechie could be the number 1 in Houston. Claypool's been interesting in training camp, but again, he's the number 3 behind Mooney and DJ Moore in an offense that is going to pass at like an absorbent rate. Parker could be the number 2 in New England. Osborne listed as the number 2 receiver in Minnesota, but we all know that's Jordan Addison, right? That's just some Fugazi bullshit. Don't necessarily read into the depth charts now. Towards the end of preseason, yeah, you can look at the depth charts, but before week 1, they have some fucking intern fill that thing out, so it's not going to be anywhere near accurate. So we're just going to go with an upside pick here. I think we're going to go with Devontae Parker this time. I am not a huge fan of the Patriots offense, but I do understand chasing the thought of the money here with Parker, right? Parker got paid. I think Parker will be the number 2 guy there because of that, even though I like Tyquan Thornton better. But do I really want that? I think I'm just going to take Alec Pierce. I think Anthony Richardson is going to be good. I've seen some positivity out of camp on Alec Pierce. Obviously, this isn't going to be the most pass-heavy offense in the NFL. You didn't draft Richardson to throw the ball 50 gazillion times a game, but we're going to go with Pierce here. I love Michael Pittman, but I think Pierce is the number 2 there. I think Downs would be considered the number 3. So we're back up on the board here for our final pick. And I always say back up on the board. It's back up on the clock. After Pierce, we see Chig, Cole Kmet, Kendre Miller, Zeke, Russell Wilson, like fucking Mike Tyson, Rashawn Johnson, KJ Osborne, Dalton Kincaid, Chuba Hubbard, Cordell Patterson, Rashi Rice, Marvin Mims, Gerald Everett, Curtis Samuel, Curtis, like in fucking, that movie called? Book, The Outsiders. Tony Boy, Kenneth Gainwell, and Jerome Ford. So we're back up here. We're going Zamir White again. Let's be honest with you, I still really am so confident in Josh Jacobs playing. But there is obviously a world where, you know, he doesn't fold. Saquon folded. Maybe he's all in on the holdout. After Zamir, we see Michael Carter, the Jets defense, Fournette, Bucks defense, Gus Edwards, Justin Tucker, the fucker. So we're back up here. We're going to go kicker and then defense. We're going to go with Bass, best kicker available. I'm not here to have some crazy kicker argument in early August. In late August, if you're like, oh, I like Zerline better than, I don't even know, Nick Folk or something like that, Will Lutz, we can have an argument, right? If my rankings are different, maybe I have Matt Prater as the kicker number 2. I won't, but then you can have some type of debate with me, but not in early August. There has only been one fucking preseason game at this point, right? But preseason is back, baby. I believe there's some games tonight. Going to be watching those if there is, and then this weekend as well. So pretty exciting overall. The NFL is truly back. We're going to go with the Saints defense because the strategy on defense is drafting a defense, playing a not-so-hot opponent week 1. They play Tennessee, but we're actually going to go with the Commanders, switcheroo, because they play Arizona, and Colt McCoy or Clayton Tune. That's just an easy matchup. And then week 2, they have a harder opponent, you just cut them. I make videos every single week during the season on which defenses to stream. There's going to be a defenses to draft video at the end of this month. So we got a B+, 89 out of 100. Quarterback is Justin Fields. Our running backs are McCaffrey and Walker. Receivers are Devontae Smith, Ridley, DJ Moore. Our tight end is Freiermuth. Our flex is Jahan Dotson. Our defense is the Commanders. Left hand up. Who are we? The Commanders. Tyler Bass, David Montgomery, Rashad Master, Bateman, Devin A-Chain, Isaiah Hodgins, Pierce, and White. Realistically, maybe we should have taken a receiver over Kenneth Walker, but you can't go back and fucking switch things around. I still think our team is really solid here. Drafting Justin Fields does make the wide receiver core a little bit lighter, but it does give a big boost to the quarterback room, especially if Fields ends up smashing like I think he has the potential to. So thank you guys all again so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Hit that like button down below if the video helped you. And let me know down below in the comment section what you thought about your team or this team. And then if you've drafted some teams, let me know down below in the comment section. Drop your team and I will rate it for you. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great one. And as always, good